Here we are back again. Welcome to the Standing in Our Truth podcast, episode 2. Richard and I discussed that today we want to check in, see how we're doing, and then dive into a topic that is really important to both of us. In fact, in our own mental health recovery journeys, we didn't even realize we had this trait, but we'll get into it. How are you doing, sister? How are you doing today?
Well, it's already the end of January, and the whole new year, new me stuff is still bright and shiny in my world. I'm really trying to get all the things done, and so I think this year is a lot about discovery. And so I'm just excited that we're doing this. It's like a nice breather for the day and getting ready for a new month, I guess. Here we go.
It's been a while, 2025 already. And I love that the pressure of the new year, new goals is kind of subsided. And now we're in somewhat of a flow. You know me and my astrology. So we had a new moon yesterday. We're in Aquarius season, and it's all about like stepping through your fears, living your full potential, and letting go of the past. And a lot of my journey in recovery is about not shutting the door on the past, but also not letting it affect me. And so healing from some of those past traumas. I'm in this like renewed energy of let's just keep moving forward. My husband, he's a military man, and he's like, keep moving forward. So I've adopted that mantra in my life. And even if it's like one step at a time, as long as I keep moving forward. But I'm feeling good today. I'm still pregnant and I feel so blessed. There's parts of me that I shouldn't be complaining. It's the shouldas, right? Like I shouldn't do this, but my heart rate is high. I'm feeling that like 6-month pregnant waddle feeling of just extra bloat, but I'm doing good and I can feel her start to kick. It is a girl. I'm starting to feel her kick and just enjoying this. You have helped me so much of like, enjoy this pregnancy, like enjoy it because when they come out, like you'll miss this time being pregnant. And in the first trimester, I was like, you are lying, right? I don't understand how people are like, I love being pregnant, but what a miracle this is, right? What it's made me realize is that life is so precious. It took us a while to get pregnant, right? We went through IVF, we had fertility issues. And so it takes a lot of effort and spiritual alignment for us as women and as with our partners to bring a human into this world. And so I'm even more appreciative now of being born and alive and that we're doing this and we're standing in our truth and just being real and having these conversations on a public platform. So I'm right there with you, sister. Here's to February.
Oh my gosh. And I'm so excited that Baby Bullish is on this podcast with us today. Doing that. This is the closest she'll ever be to you, basically. And yes, do enjoy that. They grow up so fast. I'm talking like I have like a 20-year-old or something. But with a 4-year-old, I'm like, oh, I miss them being little. And that's probably going to relate a little bit to our topic that we're going to talk about with the whole try not to be so codependent with your kids. So here we are.
We wanted to dive into codependency. And I joked earlier that I didn't know early in my sobriety and my recovery that I had traits of codependency. First for me was taking care of the most prevalent issue in my life, which was the relying on substances to numb and not feel and distract. And so after healing that and being in sobriety for 9 years now, I can see more clearly my codependent traits. For me, it shows up, and I'll let you talk about some of the definitions and some of the influential leaders in our industry in mental health about codependency. But for me, codependency shows up not as the enabling type, less of the control type of person, but more of I need validation from other people. I have this fear of abandonment and rejection. It's developed in childhood through your attachment styles. We can talk a little bit more about maybe attachment styles on another podcast to know your attachment style. But I rely on external motivators to help me get going. I need someone to give me an atta girl or a good girl or give me that validation that I'm doing the right thing to keep going. And that can be a really toxic trait, especially because you're relying on something outside of yourself and you inherently don't trust yourself or love yourself. And so I just wanted to leave it at that and How does that impact you?
I mean, codependency has been such in my life, pretty new in terms of discovery. My most pertinent issues were with my eating disorder and anxiety. And it was really after peeling that onion that once we kind of deal with those surface issues, it's like, okay, this is, this is what's happening underneath. And codependency happened to be the core of that onion, as discovered, I would say, last year. You helped that whole process. But it was like an eye-opening moment. It's like you can see clearly like where your disordered thoughts are coming from and where, what the motivators are. And just like you, it had a lot to do with the approval of others and the outside world and all of that coming from the outside and not from within. The quote that I wanted to read, which really resonated, was, and it's a simple one, but codependents are people who love people more than they love themselves. It's a sad truth of what it is to the core, but it's really at the core of most issues that are out there. We're all trying to fit in, to get the approval, to feel like we're loved. And if it's not coming from it within, we're looking for it from everyone else. That's it's a sad and shallow spot until you discover it and you're able to get the strength to face, you know, the trait itself. It's, as you know, not in the DSM. So something that people have just recently started talking about, and it's used the wrong way all the time. I'll hear friends and family just saying, I'm so close to this person, we're so codependent. It's like, oh, if you only knew how it's a really hard spot to be in.
Yeah, and there are varying degrees of codependency. We could talk about high functioning codependency, which is really looking for external validation, that approval that you spoke of, at the core, not loving yourself and not trusting yourself. And so, what I've been working on a lot over this last couple of years is trusting myself. I couldn't even make decisions on my own. I mean, the biggest decision I made in the last 5 years is moving to Austin, Texas. That was a divine thing. Like, I dropped to my knees and asked my God, the universe, my higher power, should I go or should I not? Show me a sign. And it was clear to me, when things are effortless in your life and you're like, the exits are open, they're green lights, and you just keep going. And so that's the first major decision I made for myself. But in my relationship with my husband, he is 9 years older than me. And there are times where I look at him like a parent figure, and I have some challenges with authority figure. I need to be looked and seen in good graces with people. I want to be the A+ student. I want to be front of the classroom. And through couples therapy, we've had to talk about not parentifying him and putting him in that place. But some of the decisions that I am codependent about are like, what should we have for dinner? That topic that every couple has. And it's like, whatever you want, I will put his needs before my own. I will sacrifice myself in order for everything to be okay. Like, as long as he's happy, I'll be happy. And then, we talk about other definitions of codependency, and where it really came through Mellody Beattie's work in Codependent No More is enabling an addict and enabling someone else. And some of the symptoms of that is control. And so if you in your life are dealing with someone who you feel like you have to control, what I learned was that we control because we're in fear. We are in fear of feeling discomfort, pain, and of chaos. And so we try to control every little thing in that person's life, or we have tendencies in our home to control everything, the schedule. They talk about that type A personality. Those types of people may have high functioning codependency. But for me, it's been more of, I need you to tell me that I'm okay. And so practices that I've been working on a lot lately is like loving myself and coming back to myself. And Pia Mellody, which you have studied far more than I have, I love her work so much, talks about codependency as a self-esteem issue. Have self-esteem.
I love that you brought up Pia Mellody. It's obviously some major work that that has brought up so much education for everyone over 50. I think it's been over 50 years that her work's come up. And me working at the Meadows currently, it's like obviously the core of our work. So there's a reason I think that it applies to everyone, because most core issues are about not feeling safe. And codependency is a coping mechanism, just like most other disorders. But the way you brought it up in terms of functioning, I mean, most people who are struggling with it are very high functioning, right? we are, again, have it together, have our lives together, and are saving the world day after day and killing ourselves inside is usually what's happening. But I love that there's light to how it begins in childhood in Pia Melody's book, Facing Codependency. It's really the core of how when we're growing up, was never a sense. First of all, your sense of self is destroyed for whatever reason. And there's no blame to, parents or family members for this, but we lose that sense of self because we possibly didn't feel safe, or we didn't feel heard, or we didn't feel like our opinions mattered. When I dig into my childhood, and my parents love this, when I'm going back and they're like, it's not our fault. And I totally get it. It's no parent's fault. But I think growing up with no parental manual, we can see that we're not always making our kids feel hurt or safe. And, it's how these cuts turn into wounds, and we lose our sense of self. And that's how it started for me with my eating disorder stuff. It was really a form of control. And it's the only thing I probably felt like I had control over changing in my life. So codependency was at the core of that. And I think that it's crazy that that onion was only peeled recently with coming to, my relationship as well. I noticed that now that I'm in a solid recovery from the eating disorder, I'm doing well, that I automatically went to controlling something else or trying to fix something else, something that I possibly felt like I had power over, which ended up being in my marriage. And, that wasn't favored by my partner, although the world seemed like, I was getting praised for trying to change someone or help someone. Little did I realize that I needed to turn that mirror back to myself. You helped a lot with that, as always, just having those conversations. You've been in successful recovery it's been 9 years now, and as of January. So I was just hearing from someone who's doing it right, who's in successful recovery, just handling it well. I realized that I needed to back off in my own marriage, that it wasn't my role to play. That I feel like codependency wrapped that with a bow for me.
You've done so well. I mean, you remain teachable and open. And the thing is, there's so much noise out there. And so we quickly go to Google to find the solution to everything, or these days, chat GBT on like, what can I do for my loved one who's struggling, or how can I fix them? And the reality is, for me personally, it had to be a decision that I made for myself. I had to want to change. I need the gift of desperation to want to leave that dark past behind and get on my own healing journey. And it hasn't been easy. What I'm learning through my codependency recovery, and I go to some CODA meetings. For those who don't know, it's a 12-step recovery group for codependence. And what I learn in there is that absolutely it starts in childhood. We at some point in our childhood felt unsafe. Pia Mellody talks about anything less than nurturing is trauma. And that's where we lose that sense of self, like you talked about. Then we look to external cues from the world on if we're on the right track or for safety. For me right now, it's coming back to trusting myself, making those big girl decisions by myself, because I'm about to be a mom, and I don't have to have it all together right when my child is born, but do want to have a sense of who I am before I bring in another human into this world. Some of the things I do to build trust with myself and that confidence and the esteem that she talks about, like having that esteem, is keeping promises to myself. So if I say I'm going to wake up at 7 o'clock in the morning and pray and meditate, I'm going to get up and do it. I'm not going to go snooze my alarm and go back to bed. Now, there are many days I do that, but I don't get down on myself and I give myself that grace. But keeping those little promises to yourself on a daily, like showing up for this podcast today when I'm like, Richa, we just recorded yesterday and there's no way I can look at you for another couple hours. It's acting out of integrity, right, to yourself and in your relationship. And so I think we're both doing so well. Just even the awareness is half the battle. In 12-step recovery, they talk about the awareness of the problem. You're halfway into the solution. And you just have to do work every single day to build up that esteem and self-love and worry about your side of the street, right? Like that's what you and I talk a lot about. Just mind your side of the street. Like the decisions that our partners make, our friends, our family, it's their decision to make. And if you believe in a higher power and in spirituality, you know that they have their own destiny, right? Like it's mapped out for them. They have their own higher power. Whenever they're ready to tap into it, they can. All we have to do is be right with ours and trust that everything's going to unfold the way it's supposed to.
Yeah, there's such a huge piece with trust, right? Trust yourself, trust your judgment, be proud of your decisions, although they're not right. It's a big core piece. I think me personally, I'm working on that this year. Just I don't need other people to approve my decision. And every time I'm not standing on my side of the street, it's possibly because I need to be focusing more on mine. There's cleanup needed, there's repair needed, and it's easier to tell someone else what to do, right? Than to really do it yourself. So it's come up a lot for us, I think, in our conversations, and such a pertinent, relevant topic. It's like the buzzword of the year, and everyone says it, but we don't really talk about like the ownership of how we play the biggest role in keeping the, unfulfilled life going. So
It's
yeah.
a toxic trait. And honestly, I have been addicted to chaos. When I got into my relationship with my husband, I was like, this is too, everything is going so well that I'm going to stir things up. Like I felt like I was picking fights because that's what I was used to. I grew up in a household where we weren't afraid to like speak over each other and get loud. I mean, we're Punjabi, like, that household. And when I started living with Cameron, I was like, I'm bored. I'm kind of bored. And so my toxic trait was to continue to create chaos. And it's almost this dopamine rush that I get from creating this chaos of we're angry at each other, we're mad at each other, and then we have to repair and we get back and we're lovey-dovey in love again, and then repeating that pattern again. It's not until like I realized in couples therapy, like I create this because that is just what I'm used to. And I'm ready now to live in my life with a lot more peace and serenity. And a lot of it is contentment. Can I be content with what I have right now? Am I grateful? Do I have gratitude for God bringing me to where I am today? Part of that comes from childhood of we talk about chasing that achievement, right? That blueprint that our parents set out for us is we achieve, we get the next level. And at some point you just have to be content. I'm at that point right now where I'm content and I'm just excited to share that with my new family.
I love that. And I'm so proud of you for being in this place. You're such a role model for, in recovery and as friends. And I know for a lot of your family too, I feel like when you're making that change, when we're not used to seeing it, and we're the first ones kind of make that change, it's so powerful you brought up the whole family dynamic, and I really wanted to speak to that because we both, and I think it's culturally, we all come from like a lot of enmeshed family environments where everyone's superly involved in everyone's lives. So growing up, if that's what you see, right? You see like, this is happening to my sister, this happened to my parent, I'm going to fix it. I'm going to help. I'm going to, not talk to this person because they don't deserve my conversation today because mom's not talking to this person. And it's when you grow up in that sort of the chaos, of course we continue that, right? We don't know what else to do other than get highly involved in other people's issues. And it's so freeing to realize that, hey, this is happening to someone. I'm going to be over here and support them. I'm here if they want to talk to me. I'm here to give advice. However, I'm not going to try to fix or change the situation. Although it might feel better to us, right, internally to be able to jump in and fix something or help, make someone make a decision which we think is right. It's so much freeing to just back off. That feeling has felt so good recently. You've advised me in many situations to just like, you know, don't try to give advice to your family member, your husband, whoever it may be. And let them live, whatever decision's meant to be is going to happen and they're going to face those consequences. But it's hard. I think that's harder than just jumping in and trying to save the day. So
Yeah, it is. And it's a lot more comfortable to fix, right? Because part of this codependent trait to fix and control is because we can't stand the feeling of other people in pain or feeling other people's discomfort. I consider myself a highly sensitive person and an empath. And so when I see someone struggling, or if I see somebody in my family mad at another person, it makes me so uncomfortable that I either retreat and completely avoid, which is where my addiction came in, or I'll try to fix. And I have this expectation that I'll be able to save the day, I'll be able to fix it. And the reality is, we both know that's not the case. The more that I insert myself into a relationship that's not my own or into other people's lives, the more I'm creating chaos for them. And the reality is they have to deal with it themselves. And you talk about enmeshment. I mean, I grew up in an enmeshed family. Everyone's in everyone's business. And, somebody will try to tell me that my brother is dealing with this or my sister's dealing with this. And all I have to say is that's their journey, not mine. And I learned how to set healthy boundaries. It's not that I don't want to help. It's not that I don't want them to be successful or to see them happy. It's that like my happiness, my contentment, my peace and serenity is far more important than anyone else's. And I can only be of service when my side of the street is clean, when I'm feeling okay and safe and secure and loved. And that boundary setting is such a hard lesson to learn, because at first setting a boundary feels like you're dismissing somebody. Yeah. Like that you don't care, or that it's kind of like rude. Like, how could you not love? From such a loving family, you should help other people. But again, that is their journey. They need to figure that out. We can always offer tools and support and be a loving ear and a loving hug away, but it's for them to heal. And that healthy boundary is saying, actually, at this moment, I can't be there for you because I'm not in a place to give you any advice, but I'm here to listen if you need me. And it's been a hard lesson for me.
Boundaries are just another buzzword, I feel like, right? Like recently, everyone's setting boundaries and we're wondering why it's so pertinent. But I think the world has kind of realized that you're not selfish, you're not me, you're not, egocentric if you're just setting your boundaries and focused on yourself. It's actually the nicest thing you could do for someone is take that space and let them live their journey. It feels better, right? For us, if we're just like, we release that boundary, we let someone in, we make them happy because that's what we're comfortable with, right? The comfort of others. And so I think that's why it's so relevant in society today, because we're actually learning that it shows strength in your personality. It shows just it shows power, not just over yourself, but over having respect for yourself if you're setting those boundaries. So that's been a tough one. I'm a people pleaser, you know this. If you would have told me to do this podcast at midnight, I've been like, okay, well, I'm not that sleepy. Let's do it, And that's kind of something that having friends like you, it's like realizing like, no, I'm tired. We can do this later. Or, setting times for ourselves, like your meditation and your, all these little things we do for ourselves. Those are really things that our world's learning are more important than just pleasing the rest of everyone else's happiness in their worlds.
And you've been so good at respecting my boundaries. I mean, if the audience knew how many times we've recorded this podcast and how many times our codependent traits come out, and I say to Richa, well, if you don't like it, we'll record it again. When really I'm exhausted inside and I don't want to record it, but I want Richa to love the product and the outcome as much as I do. But if we're close enough and you respect me and I respect myself, then speaking our truth be something very loving, right? Like it should be, I respect TJ, I respect her time, and I also am over this, or let's get going with it, right? And so I just love our raw conversation about codependency. It shows up in so many different ways in our lives, and it's not until we actually talk about it and become aware and say it out loud do we realize that there are things we can do to recover from the codependent trait, right? And I'll just share some of mine. Some of the things I do is to make sure that I have time for myself in the morning and make sure that I do my prayer and meditation and I'm aligned with my higher power and my God for that day so that I can make the best decisions for that day. The other things I do is that I don't answer the phone from my family or my friends when I know I'm not in a good mood, or I know that I need something from you more than you need something from me. Remember that external validation, or that I need that external reinforcer. So I have to check my motives constantly. And that's just some of the tools I use to help
Mhm.
my codependency. What about you? What are you doing to help you in your codependency?
Well, I feel like Al-Anon has really helped. Obviously the Coda groups are great, but just being open and doing a lot of Al-Anon as of last year, learned, I was just the textbook, you know, codependent wife, sometimes codependent family member, sister, daughter, whatever it may be. But it was showing up a lot in my marriage. So just I was learning that I don't always have to be the martyr, the mother, the manager, right? Or the manipulator. And that word pissed me off. I'm like, I don't manipulate. What is this? And I learned that you can't, if I didn't want to, if I didn't like a decision of someone else's, if it was a family member, or in my marriage, I would try to change it. I would feel sad that they picked a certain thing, and try to change their opinion. So I'm really taking all the forums of the typical Al-Anon wife or family member and try to do the exact opposite of those things. When I see a situation in my family, and I struggle. I mean, if you ask my family, they could probably say that I still struggle with it. But I step back. I say, let this person make their decision. Don't try to change it. Hard to tell a mother for a daughter, right? When I see that kind of situation in my family, but it's really been backing off from the situations. And again, my therapist always says to, whenever you're about to tell someone to do something, go ahead and tell yourself that same thing and do it. So it's been a lot of groups from me. It's been a lot of, I work out. I try to eat healthy. I try to make my meals healthy. I try to put in that time. I used to be an anti-TV person. And now I'm like, you know what? I want to zone out, and I'm going to do that. And my work can wait. So it's a lot of the anti-people pleasing traits that I'm focusing on recently. Meditation has been I need to follow your footsteps and do a lot more of that. But I'm trying to do exactly what everyone probably wants me to do, which is back the hell off of their situations and work on my stuff.
I'm so proud of you. You've done a lot of work, and the meditation part is tough. For me, it's just helped me become more present and more conscious of like how I'm thinking. You mentioned your therapist. I have to give a shout out to my sponsor, because in the 12-step recovery rooms, we talk about contrary action to how we think, feel, and believe. Like, you do contrary action to what you would normally do, what you'd normally say, what you would normally think. And that's a constant reminder for myself. I need to remind myself that I need to do the opposite of what the old TJ would do. And sometimes that's not easy. Sometimes it takes a lot of courage, but we're here with you along the way. And we're here to provide all the tips and tools that have worked for us, and to dive deeper into some of these topics, because I felt like this conversation was so lightening and freeing and helpful for me. I don't know about you, but just very like, it's one of our therapy sessions, Richa. It really is.
It's like we can breathe. It feels good. It feels just really, we talk about all the nitty gritty that's happening in our lives, and how we face it. And we're not afraid to say, like, this needs work. It's so nice to be able to say that to ourselves and each other, and look in the mirror, look in this camera. It's hard work, but again, it's so freeing, and it just feels like freedom for sure.
Amen, sister. So here's to our rising, here's to our healing, and standing in our truth. See you next time.
So